I said pull over. You failed to yield back there.
Lights and sirens. We have a cardiac emergency.
Step out of the vehicle, sir, please.
Within the next 47 minutes, a 68-year-old grandmother would die in the back of an ambulance. Not because of an accident, not because of a shortage of doctors, but because of a stop that should never have happened. Later that day, a 2019 $4 million lawsuit would rock the county, and a traffic officer with 14 years of experience would face a potential sentence of up to 38 years in prison. The driver, the officer decided to teach a lesson, wasn't irresponsible. His name was Marcus Thompson, a paramedic with 22 years of experience, who had directly saved over 6,000 lives. Marcus had twice received the Emergency Services Medal of Courage. He had trained hundreds of medical personnel in the state. He understood that every second that passed could determine life or death, because many years ago, his own father died from waiting too long for an ambulance. And most importantly, the camera on the patrol car that day was recording the entire incident. Before we continue, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever been stopped by someone whose ego made things worse? Someone in power who used it to prove themselves instead of helping others? Please leave your comments, because this story isn't just about a car stop. It's about what happens when power meets ego, and an innocent person pays with their life. Marcus Thompson was 44 years old at the time. He wasn't someone who entered the emergency room for glamour or fame. He started at the lowest level, a basic EMT, at just 22 years old. In his early years, Marcus worked night shifts. He worked holidays and festivals. There were weeks when he worked 80 hours, sleeping on the emergency room bench, eating quickly in the ambulance between calls. Every certification, every promotion, Marcus earned on his own. No favoritism, no shortcuts. After more than 2 decades, he became the chief paramedic of Creek County Emergency Medical Services. Marcus is certified to teach Advanced Cardiac Emergency Care, ACLS. This means he teaches others how to save patients in the most critical moments of a heart attack. More than 200 emergency medical personnel have been trained by Marcus. Many of them said that without Marcus, they wouldn't have been calm enough to save the most difficult cases. But what makes this story personal isn't the track record. It began a day, many years ago. When Marcus was 19, his father suffered a heart attack. The ambulance was stuck in traffic. Time passed, and his father didn't make it. That day, Marcus decided he would become a paramedic. He vowed to himself that he wouldn't let another family lose a loved one because of a delay. And on that Tuesday afternoon, Marcus was simply keeping his promise. Tuesday, August 14th, 8:00 p.m. 911 received a call from a quiet residential area in Creek County. On the other end of the line, a panicked woman said her mother had just collapsed to the floor. Her name was Dorothy "Me" Wilson, 68 years old, a retired elementary school teacher, a grandmother of 6 grandchildren, a breast cancer survivor who had beaten cancer in 2019. But that afternoon, Dorothy was having a heart attack. Marcus Thompson and his colleague, Clara Jenkins, were dispatched immediately. Clara Ara, century, with 8 years of experience, was known for her composure in the worst situations. They arrived at 2:38 p.m. Just 7 minutes after the call, Dorothy was still conscious, but her face was pale and her breathing was labored. Clara quickly inserted an IV line, checking her heart rate and blood pressure. The readings didn't lie. This was a major heart attack. They had no time to hesitate. At 2:40 she patru a.m. Dorothy was wheeled into the ambulance. Lights and sirens blared. Code 3, highest level of emergency. The hospital was 14 minutes away. The cardiologist had been notified. The intervention room was ready. Dorothy's daughter, Linda Wilson, Sisharar, drove behind the ambulance carrying her mother. She watched the red and green lights ahead, unaware that in just a few minutes, that journey would be halted, and time would begin to kill. 240 pros. M. The ambulance sped past a small gas station on the side of Highway 12. There, a traffic police patrol car was parked silently. Inside was Officer Derek Reynolds. Rezin wasn't on any calls. The lights were off. The radio was silent. He was just sitting there, waiting for his shift to end. As the ambulance sped past with its siren blaring and lights flashing, Reynolds was annoyed. According to him later, the ambulance had cut him off. Rezin switched on his patrol lights and sped after it. For over a mile, a police car chased the ambulance carrying a heart attack patient. Marcus looked in his rearview mirror. He didn't understand what was happening, but he had to make a choice. Marcus believed reason would prevail. He believed a brief explanation would suffice. And he pulled over to the side of the road. What Marcus didn't know was that Derek Reynolds wasn't an ordinary police officer. In the 3 years prior, Reynolds had been formally complained against 7 times. Each time involved abuse of power during traffic stops. In 2021, he held a doctor on his way to an emergency surgery for 22 minutes. In 2022, he detained a nurse for uncooperative behavior. In 2023, he clashed with a firefighter at the scene of a traffic accident. The charges were all dropped. Internal warnings. No real disciplinary action. In internal records, a supervisor had once written that Reynolds was a serious risk to the community, but no one acted. Until that afternoon, Reynolds stepped out of the patrol car. His hand was near his waist, where his gun was positioned. He walked straight to the ambulance window. "Get out of the car." Marcus turned to look at him. "Officer, we're transporting a heart patient. The situation is critical. We need to leave immediately." "I don't care who you're transporting," Reynolds replied. "You didn't yield to my vehicle." Marcus kept a calm voice. "We're an ambulance." "Officer, our lights and sirens are on. Every second counts." Rezin leaned closer. "Don't lecture me. Show me your papers." In the back compartment, Clara heard their voices. She opened the back door and shouted, "The patient is going into ventricular fibrillation. We need to move immediately." Ventricular fibrillation, a deadly heartbeat. "Get back in the car," Reynolds yelled. "No one is going anywhere without my permission." "She's going to die," Marcus said. "That's not my problem." Reynolds replied coldly, "Your attitude is the problem." Marcus tried to turn back to the ambulance. Reason reached out and grabbed his arm. "Where are you going?" "To save my patient. One more step and I'll handcuff you for obstructing duty." The ambulance siren continued to wail. The lights continued to flash. And time continued to pass. Other cars began to pull over to the side of the road. People were curious, then worried. A man named Thomas Green got out of a car. He pulled out his phone and started recording. A few seconds later, another car braked sharply. A middle-aged woman ran up. She introduced herself as Janet Morrison, an off-duty nurse. "I'm a paramedic," she said. "The patient in the ambulance needs to be taken away immediately." Soldier didn't look at her. "Everyone get back in the car. This is a police matter." Just then, another car sped up. Linda Wilson, Dorothy's daughter, stopped her car right behind the ambulance. "That's my mother," she yelled. "Please, let them go." Soldier turned around, raising his hand. "Back up. Don't interfere." Inside the ambulance, Clara watched the heart monitor. Dorothy's heartbeat became erratic. Then it dropped. "Marcus," she cried. "She's deteriorating rapidly." Marcus turned to Reynolds. "Please." "Sir." "We don't have time." Reeson stared at him. "You should have thought about that before disrespecting me." 7 minutes had passed since the ambulance stopped. Then a scream ripped through the air from the ambulance. "She's had cardiac arrest. Her heart has stopped." Clara's scream rang out from the back of the ambulance. The sound froze everyone in place. Marcus didn't hesitate for another second. He yanked his hand away from Reynolds and rushed toward the back door of the ambulance. "Where are you going?" Reynolds yelled. "Come back here." Marcus didn't answer. He climbed into the ambulance. Inside, Dorothy Mee Wilson lay motionless, eyes closed, her chest no longer rising and falling. The monitor displayed a cold. Flatline. Clara was performing CPR. Sweat dripping from her forehead. "No heartbeat," she said in a panic. "No response to medication." Marcus immediately took over. "Continue CPR. Prepare for defibrillation." The first defibrillation. Nothing. The second defibrillation. Still silence. Outside the ambulance, Reynolds stood frozen at the door. His expression began to change. For the first time, his sternness turned into bewilderment. Marcus called on the radio. "Hospital. We have a patient in cardiac arrest. Prepare for emergency resuscitation." On the other end of the line, the doctor replied that they had been ready for 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Only 6 minutes to the hospital. But those 6 minutes had been stolen. Marcus continued chest compressions, counting aloud each beat. 1, 2, 3. Each beat was a silent plea. Tri pet p. M. After 9 minutes of desperate fighting, there was no heartbeat. Dorothy Mee Wilson was pronounced dead. Outside, Linda Wilson's cries echoed on the highway. Marcus stepped out of the ambulance, his hands still stained with blood. He looked at Reynolds, his voice trembling. She only needed 6 more minutes. And in that moment, everyone understood what had just really happened. No one spoke for a few seconds. Only the wind whistling along Highway 12 and the fading siren of the ambulance could be heard. Janet Morrison, the on-call nurse, approached Reynolds. Her voice trembled with anger. "Do you know who you just stopped? It was Marcus Thompson. He trained half the state. And you just let a grandmother die in front of everyone." Resin didn't respond. He looked into the back of the ambulance, where the white sheet had been pulled up. Thomas Green lowered his phone. "I recorded it all," he said. "Every minute. Every word. You can't deny it." Linda Wilson collapsed on the side of the road. Her sobs were broken. "Mom! Mom!" Marcus sat down on the steel railing. His shoulders slumped as if he had been carrying the whole world on his back and then dropped it. He was still wearing his blood-stained gloves. Reynolds stammered. I was just doing my job. I didn't know." Marcus looked up at him. His voice was low and broken. "I told you 6 times. She had a heart attack. I beg you." The Creek County Coordination Center called the sheriff directly. Internal activation. A serious incident had occurred. When the sheriff's car appeared at the end of the street, everyone understood this stop had ended a man's career. At Trey Doazech, she doi P. Blas. M. Sheriff Benjamin Carter arrived at the scene. He had 28 years of experience in the force. And ironically, his own father had died of a heart attack many years earlier. With just a few minutes of observation, Carter understood what had happened. He ordered the scene sealed off. Reason's dashcam was immediately confiscated. Witness phone calls were also recorded as evidence. Rezin was ordered to leave the scene. His badge was removed. His gun was confiscated. He was suspended on duty immediately. The investigation began that same afternoon. What the camera recorded left no blind spots. Rezin was not on emergency duty. His car lights were off as the ambulance passed. He chased after the ambulance purely out of personal anger. The audio in the video clearly shows Marcus's voice. Heart patient. Critical. We need to leave immediately. 6 times in the first 2 minutes. Rezin also claimed he only held the car for a moment. But the clock didn't lie. The stop lasted 11 minutes. The subsequent medical report concluded Dorothy's heart stopped at the 7th minute. If the car hadn't been stopped, she would have been in the operating room before the 10th minute. Chief Carter briefly told the press that evening, this wasn't law enforcement. This was ego. And it killed someone. At that moment, everyone knew. This was no longer an internal disciplinary matter. This was a criminal case. Just hours later, Thomas Green's video appeared on social media. The caption was very short. Police let a grandmother die by blocking an ambulance. Within an hour, it had tens of thousands of views. By evening, that number had reached hundreds of thousands. Local stations were the first to air it. Then came national channels: CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. They all broadcast the same footage: a paramedic pleading and a police officer refusing. Comments flooded social media. They're begging him. That's ego murder. 7 complaints and he's still working. The Creek County Sheriff's Office issued a brief statement. We've taken notice. The officer involved has been suspended. The public wasn't satisfied with that. 3 days later, the Creek County prosecutor held a press conference. Derek Reynolds was arrested. The charges were clearly stated: negligent manslaughter, negligence resulting in death, reckless endangerment, abuse of office, maximum sentence 38 years in prison. As Reynolds was handcuffed and led into the car, there was no more plea. Only the image of a man who once wore the insignia walking down a road from which he could not turn back remained. A week after Dorothy Mee Wilson's death, her family officially filed a lawsuit. Linda Wilson represented her mother's estate. The defendants included not only Derek Reynolds, but also the Creek County Sheriff's Department and the Sheriff's Office. The claim for damages was $25 million. During the proceedings, Reynolds' entire record was made public. 7 previous complaints, 3 internal warnings, and a memo from a supervisor that stated Reynolds was a danger to the community. Those who had been stopped by Reynolds spoke out. The doctor who was held for 22 minutes, the nurse who was handcuffed, the firefighter who was threatened at the scene of the accident. It was no longer an isolated incident. It was a pattern of behavior spanning many years. The criminal trial lasted 2 weeks. The evidence was irrefutable dashcam footage, bystander videos, radio recordings, and the conclusions of medical experts. Reason's lawyer said he only followed procedure. The prosecutor asked the jury a single question: what procedure allows a patient to die because of a public official's ego? The verdict came after less than a day of deliberation: guilty. Derek Reynolds was sentenced to 18 years in prison. Parliamentary release possible after 12 years. Permanently lost his medical license. Lost his pension. Never to wear his badge again. Outside the courthouse, Linda Wilson held a photograph of her mother. She said softly, "No sentence will bring my mother back, but at least it says her life has value." And this story is not over yet. The civil lawsuit was settled before going to court. Creek County agreed to pay $19, $4 millions, 15 yuan, $2 million was given to the Wilson family. The remainder was used for policy reform and the establishment of the Dorothy Me Wilson Emergency Personnel Protection Fund. Derek Reynolds had to pay $400. 0 inches personal restitution. He lost all his retirement benefits. 3 managers were reassigned. The director of the Transportation Police Department was forced into early retirement. 2 months after the verdict, Marcus Thompson stood before the press. Beside him was Linda Wilson. Marcus's voice was slow and heavy. "I've been in this profession for 22 years. I've seen many people die. But Dorothy haunts me, because I know I can save her." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I need 6 more minutes. Just 6 minutes." Marcus turned to the camera, to the paramedics, EMTs, nurses, and firefighters watching this video. Your work is meaningful. Don't let anyone stop you from saving lives. Then he addressed the police officers. "I know there are many good people in the force, but control your egos, because those egos can kill." Linda Wilson stepped up. "My mother taught for 40 years. She beat cancer. She deserves to see her youngest grandchild." She looked directly into the camera. "I don't want another mother, another grandmother to die just because someone wants to be respected." Following the incident, the state passed the Dorothy Act. Blocking or delaying an ambulance became a felony. But the question remains, are we going to wait until tragedy strikes before we act? Or do we dare to stop these dangerous people before they destroy more lives? Dorothy Me Wilson was just 6 minutes from the hospital. 6 minutes to live. 6 minutes were stolen. She deserved to live. And we deserve a better system. See you in the next story.